Now let's turn to our first country focus session, Argentina. We will hear directly from Jose Maria Segura, partner in PwC Argentina, who will share perspective on trade, investments, and the evolving business landscape in the country. So Jose Maria, thank you very much. And the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to share with you some insights on the Argentine economy, which has different risk in the short term, but in addition to that, has significant opportunities in specific sectors in the long run. Paula, I'm not allowed to share my screen.
Sorry, let me check. Luciano, I don't know if you can help me with that.
Yes, I will make him co-anfitrion, co-host.
Okay.
Can you try now, Jose?
Yeah, I think so.
You should have the sharing button, compartir, right in the middle of the Zoom.
Yeah, are you seeing?
Yes,
perfect.
but we see it in like
in presentation mode or?
Yes, in the presentation mode, yes.
No?
No. Maybe you should click usar presentación con diapositivas.
What is it?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Esa.
No, okay. So
no, well, we cannot see Jose the presentation. Sorry.
What are you seeing?
You, not the presentation.
I'll try again.
Yeah.
Compartir pantalla. So let me check. Compartir pantalla completa. Now, can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So I cannot see myself, but no problem. So as I mentioned before, we will go through the short-term risks that the Argentine economy has, and on top of that, there are long-term opportunities for those that can take the chances and perhaps the short-term risk. We will go through the Argentine history, how Argentina's declined through all the last century, and what are the short-term outlooks and the significant risk that the macroeconomy has, and how it can reconfigure or restructure in the mid to long run to take these opportunities. And then some final thoughts on what are the risks that can boost or somehow stop this process. Argentina did not have a model to integrate in the global economy since it left the agricultural export model in the early 20th century. It has an import substitution model, and apart from the short experience in the 90s of trade liberalization and try to use the Mercosur as a platform to integrate in the global economy, it never it could not integrate in the global economy since the early 20th century. And the common pattern of this was a policy that tried to boost the domestic market and domestic consumption by increasing the government expenditure. The government spending, and the problem was that it could not be genuinely financed and create cyclical crises that were in terms of issuance of money and ended up with hyperinflation, or even or when it was not possible to increase the issuance of money due to inflation, then it turned into indebtedness. So particularly from the 70s to nowadays, the Argentine economy faced cyclical crisis, alternated hyperinflation and debt crisis. And this ended up with a stagnant economy that reflects in the reduction of the share of Argentina in the total exports of the world, the small or the participation in or the impossibility to attract foreign direct investment as compared to other Latin American countries, and a stagnant GDP per capita, which in more than 100 years only increased 50%. And this ended up with a country that was one of the most equalitarian, with a significant portion of its population in poverty in the current century. So this is the history and where the economy comes from, but there is a good news, which is that there is a new opportunity to integrate, as it has not happened in the last year. Why? Because technology, and specifically artificial intelligence, needs a significant amount of energy and needs minerals to conduct this energy. And in these two cases, Argentina has resources to supply this demand. In addition to the traditional agricultural exportation, now Argentina has resources to, if they are put in production, can supply the demand for energy and also for minerals. So it is a new opportunity to integrate in the international or in the globalized economy. What happened? What happened is that in the short run, the macroeconomy needs to stabilize. As I mentioned before, we have been facing cyclical crisis since the 70s. And the good news again is that the government has a plan with non-negotiable goals to lower inflation. And to lower inflation, there are two conditions that need to be met. One is fiscal surplus, in order to break the fiscal dominance and to let the central bank manage the monetary policy without need to expand it to finance the treasury. And the other one is exchange rate. Argentina is very peculiar in this sense, because due to the inflationary history, the people try to protect their savings by purchasing dollars. And when there is expectation that the peso will devalue, then the peso demand falls. And even with a stable monetary supply, then it creates an excess supply and increase the inflation. So it is not only it is important to keep the issuance of money stable, but also to keep the exchange rate stable in order to avoid reduction in the peso demand that distorts the exchange rate market. With this plan, and things were moving quite well up to July, where the government was able to get fiscal balance, both primary and financial balance, except for December, which is seasonal. And this led the government significantly reduce inflation from levels to higher than 20% monthly to less than 2% in the months, or around 2% in July, August. And this was one of the goals that the government considered will let pass through the electoral process successfully and enter into a cycle that increase confidence and reinforce the positive trend in the economy. However, the weak point was that due to the need to keep stable the exchange rate, central bank was not able to increase the international reserves, and this created some problems, as we will see in a moment. On the other hand, the central bank balance sheet was improved, and but at a certain cost, because part of the debt that the central bank has in its balance sheet was moved to the treasury. As we see in this chart, the central bank securities reduced significantly from 30% of 40% of central bank liabilities. Here there are some liabilities related to the FX restrictions that were in place in the past and were converted into debt, but mostly the reduction was on short-term pesos issues debt that was transferred to the treasury. And this short-term debt needs to be rolled over in a short period of time, basically on a monthly basis, and creates a chance to it is a source of instability to the peso demand, because once a dollarization process starts, these ones can be sold and pressed against the currency. On the other hand, the other problem was the foreign currency debt of the government, which has significant payments in 2026 and 27, and need to be refinanced. But with the current levels of country risk, it is not possible to go to the international market to refinance this debt, and thus the less the probability of refining the debt, the higher the chance that the treasury needs to go to the central bank to purchase the currency. And even though there may be surplus in pesos, it is necessary to purchase the dollars against the reserve, and this is what I mentioned before, that put pressure on the foreign exchange market. Due to different factors, some part to mistakes made by the government, partially because the opposition in the Congress started to introduce political noise, like passing bills increasing the spending of the government, partially because it rejected some rejections for certain bills approved by the Congress, and partially due to the fact that the third quarter of the year is seasonal in terms of exportation. The second quarter is the peak of export grain complex exportation, and due to certain measure it was increased during this year. So August faced a reduction in the inflow of dollars due to exportation, and an increase in the demand. All electoral years are more the individuals during the electoral years tend to protect, as I mentioned before, for the uncertainty of the electoral process by purchasing dollars. So they changed the portfolio, moving from peso-denominated asset to dollar-denominated asset. The problem was that due to these factors that I have been mentioning before, the political noise and so on and so forth, and because the restrictions were released during May and April. There was a repressed demand. So during this year, the increase in the demand for dollars for the individual doubled those of normal electoral years, and this put pressure to contain the exchange rate. As I mentioned, it was necessary to keep stable the inflation. The point was that during July, the government was able to refinance or roll over the debt, and more than roll over, but at the cost of increasing the interest rate from 40% to 70% in nominal terms. With an inflation decreasing, it was a significant increase in real terms of the interest rate. And on top of that, it increased the reserve requirement for the banks. So it was a very tight monetary policy that impacted the economic activity in the last months. The economy was growing mostly due to an increase of monetization of the economy by the increase in credit, but the disposable income was or stagnant during the recovery in the wages was insufficient to boost the economy, but it increased due to the expansion of credit. However, the increase in the interest rate that we mentioned before significantly increased the non-performing loan and impacted the disposable income of the families, and this in the end impacted the electoral process. The stable inflation was not enough to convince the voter to vote for the government, and in the provincial elections of September 7th, the government lost against the Peronism. The problem was not that it did not win the elections, but the difference between them, because it was expected that in this provincial election, La Libertad Avanza could not win. However, the almost 15 points was unexpected, and this somehow increased the uncertainty, and so the decline in the demand for pesos, the dollarization of portfolio, and made the exchange rate to touch the ceiling of the band where the exchange rate is floating, and obliged the central bank to sell last week more than $1 billion to keep the exchange rate at the ceiling of the band. As I mentioned before, the need for dollars, if the central bank is using the dollar to defend the exchange rate, it won't have the dollars to sell to the treasury to make the bondholders payment, and so there was a peak in the country risk, putting away the possibility to refinance the external debt. So this is due to the political uncertainty that created these issues, and how can it continue, because the national elections will be in October 26th, and up to this moment, perhaps we will see or foresee a high volatility scenario that could be less volatile or more volatile, but the point is that probably we will face volatility during the next days, at least up to election. Where we are basing our scenario on the assumption that in any case, wherever the result of the elections is or are, the there will not be a reversal on the fiscal achievement. Even though the government lost the election, the fiscal surplus will be kept. And in an optimistic scenario, the negative expectations may reverse, as we are seeing during this week, with the support of the United States to the domestic government, with the potential support by the Treasury. If this continues, then the volatility will stay will be contained at the current levels, or with higher possibility to access the international market. So the exchange rate or the exchange regime of floating within bands could be maintained, or at least abandoned, but in a controlled manner. Interest rate will start lowering, and the pass-through will be lower, and so inflation will continue in descending path. With in the mid-run, remonetization and expansion of credit start recovering the economic activity. A moderate scenario, however, would be that negative expectations cannot be reverted, so the demand for pesos continue to fall. It will be a higher volatility, and the exchange rate regime will be abandoned, perhaps to a free-floating FX rate. In this case, there will be an initial overshoot of the exchange rate with a sharp depreciation that could start to stabilize in the second Q of 2026, where, as I mentioned before, there is a seasonality in the exportation. So after an initial overshooting, the exchange rate may start to stabilize with an initial pass-through that pushes inflation higher than in the other scenario. Interest rate can lower, mostly in real terms. There will be a significant reduction on interest rate, and this could start after the initial contraction that they will have. By the second half of 2023, a rebounding of the economy can start. As you can see, even the moderate scenario has chances to go through and to revert the initial crisis that the economy can face. The point here is that even though with a devaluation of real terms that happened in the last months, due to the fact that the pass-through was lower than in the past due to the stagnant activity, or that we've seen in the last months, and we have a level of exchange rate similar to those that the economy has during Macri administration in the 70s or 80s, or in 17 or 18. The point is that, as we will see in a moment, there are sectors that are expanding, sectors that has to do with mining, with energy, and increase the balance, the trade balance for the economy, reverting, for instance, the oil balance from negative to a positive one, and an increasing balance in mining. So even with the need for a devaluation, the long run trend would be of the pesos to appreciate when the investment in these sectors start to or continues maturing. But somehow this would the risk that, or create the risk that we are seeing. What are, as we mentioned before, the Argentine economy is endowed to with mining resources and energy resources to supply the global demand that we've seen for these sectors. Of course, the agro will continue being competitive, but if the Argentine economy puts in production all these resources, exportation may be increased by more than 50% in the next 5 years. Exportations are at a level of between 70 to 80 billion dollars, and could increase up to 120, 130 billion in 2030. The government put in place a regime to incentive the large investment, which is the so-called large investment incentive regime. It's to attract large-scale investment higher than or bigger than $200 million in sectors like energy, mining, infrastructure, forestry, technology, tourism. It provides incentives in terms of fiscal stability, a 30 years for tax, custom, and FX. And due to the track record of Argentina, this is an asset. Tax incentives such as accelerated depreciation, VAT refunds, and relief for the importation of capital goods, and a phase of free availability of export proceeds, which are with the current regulation needs to be mandatory inflows into the domestic market. There is a period to adhere to the regime with a special purpose vehicle to implement the investment. And there are also incentives for suppliers to those companies that adhere to the regime. So it has opportunities not only for those companies that make the 200 million investment, but also to suppliers to those projects. With all these elements, there is an expectation that the agro exportations increase for the next years. In the case of agro, there is an estimation by the Rosario Stock Exchange that foresee 159 million metric tons by 2035, which is an increase of about 30 million tons, and also an increase in exportation by almost 20 million tons. As regards to mining, there are more than 70 projects of mining project with expected investment of $33 billion in different minerals, lithium leading the projects, but also in copper, gold, and silver, and also there are some uranium projects. All these projects are all along the Andes Mountains, mostly, and in the northwest of Argentina, where there are the lithium resources, and copper and gold in the central part of the western side of the country. When these projects mature, it is expected to reach a 12,000 billion increase in exportation by 2032. As regard to energy, the decline of production that started in the beginning of 2000 started to recover and rebounded due to the exploitation of shale resources, both in crude, in oil, and in gas production. And it is expected that in the short run, the production both of oil and gas could reach the peaks that Argentina saw during the mid-90s. It is expected that by 2030, Neuquén province will export 20 billions of dollars itself, but with the possibility of other provinces increasing the exportation, such as Mendoza or Rio Negro. Neuquén province can reach a crude oil production of 1 million barrels per day by the end of this decade. And on top of that, there are gas resources, and there has been announcement on investment of vessel that can export LNG, and it is planned that during the next years, but mostly during the next decade, in the 30s, Argentina can become a significant LNG exporter. So with all this background, what may happen? Well, as I mentioned before, exchange rate has a significant impact on the economy, and there was a possibility that the transition between the current shortage of FX and the problems and instability and stability that it creates in the macroeconomy can be resolved in the mid to long run. The problem is the transition from one moment to the other, and it is important because it creates social and political issues. Why? Because as we've seen, the most active sectors, or those that have more chances to significantly growth, are near the Andes Mountains and in the southern part of the country, where there's no population, or population is much lower than in the central part of the country, where there is the industry. With an appreciated exchange rate, Argentina can be stable, or can be balanced in terms of trade, but this create competitive problems, mostly to the industry, that cannot compete with the current cost with this appreciated currency. And since the adjustment in the real economy differs from that in financial economy, it can lead to low activity and unemployment in the certain industrial sectors, and in certain, as we've seen before, in certain parts of the country where most of the population resides. And as we've seen in the recent election in Buenos Aires province, it creates political risk that can generate stoppers to the change. However, the good news is that there are factors that can mitigate this problem. The most significant is a policy that somehow abandons the bans or the regime, and lets the exchange rate freely float and accommodate to a level that it is more aligned with the current condition of the economy. And even though there may be an initial impact and an initial overshooting with costs in terms of higher inflation in the short run, it could be more stable in the long run. But there are other alternatives that don't necessarily need to go through this path. If there are political consensus, and if there are a reduction of Argentine cost with reforming the labor and the tax markets, and a reduction in terms of cost, then the exchange not necessarily need to go through this process of higher devaluation and higher inflation. But as I mentioned before, in the worst case scenario, the economy can go through the project through the process with this with a higher depreciation of the pesos, and while the investment in those sectors that we mentioned that are but with potential to expand the exportation matures. So in the meantime, and while these projects matures, there are other sectors that could increase the possibilities of hiring people and keeping employment or create jobs in those parts of the country where there are limitations to increase. These sectors are the financial and capital markets, where the flows of funds need to be recirculated. The gains on the mining energy sectors can be recirculated through financial markets. So there are possibilities that the financial and capital market be sectors with potential increase. Construction is another sector. The economy needs infrastructure to put in place and to export all these productions. So construction is a sector that can contribute or need to contribute to the value creation in these sectors, and also contribute with employing people. Those manufacturing sectors that are have with linkage with the dynamic sectors, industry to manufacture equipment, goods, and supplies for the dynamic sector, for the agriculture, for the mining, for the energy. The trade will also be, because even though the increase in the capacity in the exportation capacity will create needs for other consumable goods, and these goods, if they are not being produced in Argentina, they may be they'll need to be imported. So that there are chances for the trade to have a significant dynamic in this sense. And since Argentina is a very wide and long country, the transportation and logistics is a factor that needs to be developed to add value to all the other sectors that will be growing. With this in mind, the final thought is that even though there are short-term risks, Argentina has good chances to integrate. I would say that there are the higher chances that we've seen in the last century of integrating in the global economy, to put into value the resources it has, that there will be demand for these goods, and the ones that may take the risk, the early birds will or can obtain significant benefit, even though in the context of risk, the mid to long run perspectives are good for the Argentine economy. And this is all, and thank you very much.